This is a principle that is so powerful, yet so completely overlooked in our day and age. It boggles the mind how most people don't pay attention to it. But I promise you, if you apply it into your life and to part of your identity, you'll be surprised at how quickly things can change. And what we're talking about here, as we commonly do in the Deeper Not More series, is again the hidden laws of shifting timelines that are actually at play. Because in life, the things that are actually responsible for moving and shifting your life, they're often invisible. And what this is essentially is in equals out. I call it the input and output principle. And basically, what it means is whatever energy you put into your life is the energy that you're going to get out. And what this is like a meat grinder, which I drew here with my Master 4 art skills. I don't know if you ever played with one of these when you were a kid. It's a ton of fun. You can put anything into it and it will come out ground and in pieces. If you put meat in there, you get ground beef. That's what it's mostly used for. Or you can also put Play-Doh in there, dough, dried bread, cucumbers, strawberries, carrots, whatever you imagine, you can put it in there and it'll come out ground into a pulp. And you can mix all these things together too, and it'll come out as a mixed bag of those things. And in life, it's kind of the same way. Whatever you put into your system, your body, your mind, will come out. And the meat grinder is essentially a metaphor for your attention and for your consciousness. And this is so important, yet so completely overlooked. And in our day and age, in our reality, in our society, in our conditioning, there's such an emphasis on results, on creating different results, on creating a different external reality, but nobody actually pays attention to the inputs. Nobody. And very often it is the input or an absence of a certain input in your life that actually creates all the results. That is the most important thing. And you would never even think about that that's actually what's important. And it's kind of like making a cake, all right? What do you need to make a good cake? Well, you need to know how to make a cake, but it doesn't matter how good you are at making cakes. If you don't have the right ingredients to make a cake, like if all I give you is a bunch of salt, you are not going to make a good cake. If all I give you is a bunch of sugar, you're still not going to make a good cake. If I give you the perfect ingredients, then you have a perfect cake. If I give you the most amazing ingredients, the highest quality food, and you know how to make the cake, then you're going to make an incredible cake. That's the way it works. And there's no other way around it. And in life, and especially in business, it's the last thing that we look at. And the ingredients in this case are the qualitative, energetic inputs that you put your attention on every single day. I'll tell you how I discovered this and how I used it. And I'll give you a real powerful, real world example of how I recently used this in my life to create an absolute amazing result that actually resulted in the change of a major industry right now in the health industry. And also, finally, how you can apply this step by step into your life. So I found this out when I was actually in a phase in my life where I was just starting to do what I'm doing right now, which is making videos, sharing wisdom, coaching, and mentoring as my main business. And it sucked. I was not creating any results. I was making videos and they sucked. And nobody was reaching out for me to work with me. And it was awful. It was not a good time. And like most highly intelligent, productive people, what I decided to do was to try to do more stuff. And I did more and it sucked as well. I worked harder. I tried different things and nothing was going anywhere. And I went in lots of loops and circles. And it wasn't until several years ago that I started to catch on to this. I started to make some changes on this area of my life. And all of a sudden, everything I was normally trying to do out here was easier. People began to reach out to me. I started to make content that really connected with people. And it had nothing to do with me trying harder and trying to do more and trying to create better results. It has to do something with something completely different here on this side. And I'll tell you what it is. It occurred to me when I actually was coaching people later on in this same field. I had a bunch of students who also had businesses, and they were trying to make YouTube videos, and they were trying to make better videos. And like most people in that space, they were asking themselves questions like, how do I get better clicks on my videos so people click on them? And how do I get people's attention? And how do I do it? And what's the right way? And Alex Hormozy said this, and what's the right business model? And all this stuff, right? And this is what most people do in most areas of their life. They're kind of just wandering around and asking questions and looking for the magic bullet, looking for what's the secret sauce to this? What's the secret sauce to that? How do I do it? Why am I not getting the results? And spinning in circles and looking for answers and investing in courses here and investing in that. And they're just going in loops. And the reason for that is because, again, inputs equal outputs. And most of that activity, while it seems productive, while it seems like you're asking the right questions, most of it, if you really look deep, it's seated in fear, it's seated in lack, and it's seated in uncertainty. I don't know what's the way to do it. I don't know how to do it. It's not knowing, unknowing, or not knowing. And it's distractions. This is uncomfortable, so I'll go distract myself with this or that, right? And while it seems like it's the right thing, all this is just the energy of all that, and it just goes out into the output. So on the outside of your life, you could try to be a duck, you could quack like a duck, you can sound like a duck, you can move like a duck, you can look like a duck, but if on the input side of things you're doing all that, you're going to be a duck that's laced and tainted with fear and anxiety and uncertainty and not knowing. And all the other ducks are going to feel that, and they're not going to want to do duck things with you. And that's a metaphor not just for business, but for any result in your life. And I started to catch on to this and started to realize, maybe the results in my life have nothing to do with me trying to be a duck. Maybe it's everything to do with me actually shifting my attention on something completely different. And I'll tell you what I started doing in my life. I actually found a mentor, a who in my life that resonated with a different energy, that really resonated with what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And the stuff that this mentor was teaching me was profound. It was incredible. It was changing my life. And I doubled down on spending time with this person and watching their content and studying their material. I found another mentor, another who, that really resonated with me. And I spent like a ton of energy just looking at that. And it felt really good. And I began to be obsessed with mastery. I began to be obsessed with mastering my mind, with mastering my energy, and mastering my life in many different aspects of my life. I began to study. I began to study deeply life and consciousness and everything to do with my field. I began to be devoted to my mission. I fell in love with what I was doing, and I made it a daily practice to be in love with what I was doing, with what I was actually creating. And I focused on being at service. No matter what the results were out here, I put every single focus out of my consciousness on just serving and asking the question of like, what could I do to be of service? So whenever my mind was in doubt, whenever my mind was searching or looking for something externally, I just focused on service and what can I do to be in this energy that I want to be in today, as if it was already done, as if I was already living the life that I wanted to be living. And I focused on removing the bullshit from my life. And this really should be number one, but removing the BS, okay? the distractions, the doom scrolling, the addictions, the toxic patterns and relationships in my life, the people that don't belong, all the little activities that I did that just dispersed my consciousness into random stuff. And I started to reclaim that power, to bring my attention away from distraction, which is really, again, rooted in fear and just wanting an escape, right? Because again, I figured all that's going to show up on the outside, on the result. And so I removed the crap and started focusing on putting as much qualitative inputs into my life as possible. And guess what started to happen? I started to create content that deeply connected with people. My energy began to shift because remember, the energetic input here, ENG for energy, started to shift, right? It started to go higher. And so what's going to happen on the output? Well, the energy is also going to go higher. All right. The duck is starting to look differently. And people started to reach out to me and say things like, I don't know what it is about you, but your energy is so magnetic. I just want to spend time with you. And like, can I work with you? And they started studying my material. People would say things like, you've made a video that completely changed my life. Like, I want to watch everything that you do. And things started to improve. And it's not like the videos are going massively viral or getting millions of views, but the quality of it was so dense that it started to qualitatively change things here on a very, very big way and attract the quality that I actually wanted in my life. And it became a feedback loop because the higher this quality went, the higher the energy was out in here as well. And it motivated me on this side, and the things started to flow and flow. And I started to teach this to my students and say to them, listen, if you want for people to see you as an authority figure, right? And this is true whether you're in business or in life or just want better networking, better opportunities, not necessarily just if you're making videos. If you want people to see you as an authority figure, on the input side, you have to begin to become obsessed, devoted to your inner authority. And that might be whatever is close to you, God, source, whatever your name for is. You got to build a connection with that deeply. That's what my whole life began to be more and more about, connecting with the divine authority inside of me. And the more I put focus on that, the more people started to see me as an authority. It's kind of a reflection, because if you're connecting to the inner authority, you start to resonate with that, right? The more I focused on love and the joy of my mission and what I was doing, the more I started to resonate, and the more that energy of passion began to permeate my energy here on the outside. The more I focused on studying and being obsessed with mastery of my craft, the more people here saw me as somebody worth studying, right? Because again, that energy is going through the meat grinder and is coming out here on the other end, right? Big mystery, right? But it's really quite simple. And so the more I stopped caring about the result and all that stuff, which really just made me anxious and fearful every day, and just fell in love with mastery, the more amazing things became. And this is so freaking overlooked right now, especially in business and life. There's just so much junk information out there. Some of it is good, but most of the energy of it is just like, how do you get a better result? How do you make more sales? How do you find your niche? How do you blah, blah, blah? And all it does, if you really pay attention, is create a ton of anxiety in your life. And we're not meant to become all marketers and perfect like funnel structuring people. All that is just little structural bits of making something. What we're really aiming to become in our life is masters of our craft and masters of who we truly are, of our passion. We have totally forgotten this in our day and age. If you really commit to this, all this is effortless. People will just reach out to you and want to be part of your alignment by default of you walking your path. And it's so simple. It's so easy to overlook because this is tantalizingly seductive. If you just know the right secret, if you just know the right way, if you just follow the step-by-step recipe, then you're going to create amazing results. Oh, you might not know the right thing, right? And maybe you're missing out on something. And how many times have you fallen into this trap where you think there's something special around the corner and you invest your time and energy and money into it, and you realize it's just something repackaged that you've seen so many times. The whole business industry is incestuous in this right now because people have completely forgotten this. And I'll tell you the greatest secret, the greatest hack that changed the most for me in this. And it's a question, okay? You got to look at where in life, I hope you can see this, where in life are you a brown belt in something, but you're deluding yourself that you are a 7th degree black belt. And I'll tell you where this came from. I have a friend who's a karate master. He teaches students all the time. He's my best friend. And one of the things he told me I never forgotten, he had his sensei, his master, decades ago. And in his dojo, in his classroom, the day that you got your black belt in karate, the sensei would come to you and he would pat you on your back and he would say, "Great, you've now earned the right to start learning. Now your learning actually begins." And it was kind of a funny thing to hear, but there was so much wisdom behind it, because the same is true for life. The moment you actually get your black belt, all it means is that you're now ready for learning. You've now shown the universe that you're committed. Now you can actually start to learn. Now you can be a beginner. And in life, a lot of the reasons why we stay stuck here on the input side is because we fail to notice that. We have reached a degree of knowing in some area. Great. But that doesn't mean you've made it. It doesn't mean you've got the highest degree black belt. It means now you can start to practice. The moment I started to adapt that mindset of like, I'm actually just beginning to learn my craft. I want to go deeper. I want to become obsessed with mastery and the understanding that it never ends. I started to radiate an energy of curiosity and an energy of willingness to learn. And because I started to radiate that, then others around me wanted to learn with me as well and to be part of what I was doing, because I wasn't appearing as a know-it-all or someone who's perfect. I was still in my vulnerability and in my openness. And that began to translate over to this side as well. And in our present day and age, it's like the last thing that is on people's minds. We put a lot of energy into kind of guarding our vulnerability and trying to show people that we are confident and we got it all figured out and that we know something, so that then people will work with us or want to hire us. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And this is the greatest oversight, is that actually vulnerability here on the left side is trust here on the outside. People trust you when you're authentic and when you're vulnerable more than if you're trying to be perfect all the time. And this is so absolutely key. So this is, in a nutshell, the input and output principle, that energy in will actually dictate the energetic quality of the outputs. And you can apply this into any area of your life to essentially eliminate being stuck and start creating real leverage in your life. And I'll tell you how I recently used this to create a pretty remarkable results. And if you've been following my work, then maybe you know that about a year ago, I relaunched a major project of mine. It's called Adia Clarity. It is an incredible invention in the area of health, in water science, and mineral science. It's absolutely mind-blowing, helps people revitalize their water, their minerals, and create groundbreaking changes in their health by reintroducing trace minerals that are completely robbed from our soils and our waters. And it's been a massive saga in my life, because 14 years ago, we launched this out to the world and it went crazy out there, changed so many people's lives. And then it got violently attacked, smear campaigned, kind of buried from the world for over a decade. And suddenly I got this impulse, this insight after many years, 14 years of going, okay, I think I'm ready to bring this out to the world again. And I think I know how to do this so we can actually correct this major wrong and change the world. And I was a year ago in a room just like here in Spain by myself, just looking at this thing going, okay, how do we correct this wrong? I had this big, massive challenge. I wanted to create a result where I wanted to get this out to millions of people and get involved top doctors from all over the world who were researchers and scientists who could actually get the truth about this out into the world and get it out to people who needed it. And I wanted to change the entire narrative of the entire health industry for the rest of history. That was the goal I had, and I was alone in a room with this in my room with this invention, and just a couple of phone calls with the people who were involved. And I was thinking, okay, how do I do this? And of course, my impulsive instinct was to create a result. I wanted to create a documentary that would, in a very short time, explain everything, the whole backstory, the science, and just have so much emotional leverage that it would change the world. That's my knee-jerk impulse. Make a video. And with my wisdom, I decided to not do that. And I decided to put all my attention here. I thought, okay, if this is going to happen, I literally have to become this. I have to become an absolute expert in this technology like I've never did before, in cellular biology, in trace minerals, and go deeper than I ever have before. I'm not even going to care about the outputs, because if I just go out there and make a video right now, it's not going to really make a dent. And so I started obsessing about this. I made a phone call to the main person involved, and I spent hours with him learning the science. I interviewed him. I made a podcast. I went deeper into it. I rewatched it. I started to really want to understand things about minerals and cellular biology that I didn't understand before, and uncovering it. And I spent hours, days, weeks in it. At that time, on my radar, just as I was getting into them, because again, my energy was shifting, so I was attracting different things. A class popped up in my inbox by another world-renowned doctor that was actually doing a ton of clinical research into trace minerals and cellular biology. And so I immediately invested into the class, and it was dense. And I watched it, and then I watched it again. I'm going deeper, not more, and again, and again, and again. And I obsessed about it, about every single enzyme and protein function, and really understanding the inner workings of this. I began to know more about trace minerals and this aspect of cellular biology than most doctors on this planet, to the point where I could actually get on a call with a doctor, a physician, and blow their minds with the things that I was dropping on them. And it was around that time that I started making the main micro documentary of the movement, which you may have seen. And what came out was a pretty damn good video. And we used that as a leverage to get this out to the world. And then around this time, I got a phone call. And it was from Dr. Pierre Corey, who is actually the doctor that got ivermectin out into the world and changed the course of history in 2020 by making a testimony at the US Senate. And he was calling me about something completely different, but I was so in this energy that I was like, you know what, you really should take a look at this. And we got it to him in his practice, and he started working with it and getting incredible results. And we communicated for almost a year. And in the end, he ended up writing an entire book about this invention and the science, and now published it out to tens of thousands of people, over 100,000 people on Substack. It's going absolutely nuts, and it's changing the course of how people are looking at water and minerals and health. We're just in the beginning of it. A few years from now, people will be talking about this nonstop, and we're going to have a completely new paradigm on how we heal the body and especially work with cancer. Anyway, won't bore you with the details, but again, me starting alone here a year ago with just a vision to make a change in the world by applying this principle, by not focusing on the result, by putting all my energy on the inputs only, all of a sudden, all that happened. One of the world's most renowned doctors writing a book about the work that I seeded and changing the whole planet and changing the lives of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. That's now underway. And It had nothing to do with me trying to force that, but everything to do with holding the vision and going deep and deep into the energetic inputs. And I tell you, whether you want to create a new business, whether you want to create a new vocation for your life, whether you want to create some amazing project, some output, if you apply this into your life, you're going to be shocked how quickly things change when you completely ignore the external outputs. Ignore this. Ignore every voice that tells you you won't make it, you don't know, how do I do it, and completely start focusing on this side of your life. All right, so what are the practical steps of actually implementing this into your life? Well, the first step in the in and out principle is, instead of asking yourself what inputs I could add to make a better output, is you actually have to ask yourself what you can remove. And really, in life, most of the time, we put a lot of bullshit in the inside of the equation, and then we wonder why we're getting garbage and bullshit on the output. And I'll give you an example of this. A lot of people in the fitness industry, for example, they obsess about content, about how to train and how do I do it right and how do I get all the right supplements and what do I do and do I need the perfect shoes for the gym or do I have the right equipment, and you can spend hours and days and weeks obsessing about these things. But in reality, if you just remove the BS from your life, if you stop drinking on Friday and just make sure you have good sleep and in your life, you're going to get tremendous benefit on the output side of things in your training. And it sounds simple and maybe a little bit dumb, but very few people actually do that. A lot of people will obsess about supplements and doing all the perfect stuff and the perfect diet, but then they'll keep toxic people in their life and keep drinking on Fridays and smoking weed throughout the week and numbing themselves with all kinds of other addictions and watching Netflix. And while that may seem unrelated, it's putting junk into your brain. It's taxing your nervous system. It's putting anxiety into your body, and it's affecting your training more than you can imagine. It's why the people who are the greatest in fitness and in any area athletically, they'll usually tell you to focus on the fundamentals, like get sleep, eat right. Just get those two things right, and you can eliminate most of all the other crap. And until you actually eliminate the nonsense, the addictions, the distractions, the toxic stuff in your life, then none of these other crazily high optimizational things will make a difference at all in your life. Like, you can have the best supplements, but if you're going out and getting shit-faced every Friday, it's really not going to make a difference. Like, stop doing that, and then all of a sudden your life will greatly improve on the outside. And maybe you're not an addict, maybe you don't have a drinking problem. However, I guarantee you, if you look deep enough, there's probably some stupid shit that you're doing that if you didn't do that, things would be way better. There would be a lot more space in your life and a lot more energy, a lot more empowerment. And this is really where you get a lot of power when you remove this stuff. Because one of the main reasons we get distracted and we go to our addictions and social media and putting our attention outside is because we're terrified of facing ourselves and terrified of facing our own power. And when you remove all that first, it might be a little bit scary, but then things get really interesting. You're way more powerful. Remember, I was coaching a man a couple of years ago who was starting a YouTube channel teaching people how to play guitar. And he wanted me to give him some tips on how to do things right. One of the first things we did, we had a Zoom session, and I could see behind him there was a television. I was like, dude, you own a TV? He's like, yeah. I'm like, throw it out. He's like, what do you mean? I watch hockey on it sometimes. I know, throw that TV out. You don't watch hockey anymore. Right now, you're a full-time YouTuber, and you're dedicated to teaching people. And so we went through it. He threw his TV out, his whole television set, and he replaced it with a YouTube studio and started teaching people guitar. He became obsessed with the inputs of just making incredible lessons. And amazing things started to happen in his life. He actually got invited to be part of a band and started a whole different thing because he was in the energy of actually pursuing his passion and being in his joy rather than being in the distractions. And you won't believe the actual cost of these distractions, these small things like having a TV in your room, in your house. If you own a TV, it's just one of the dumbest things to have. Okay. It means you have to watch it. It means you have to put things in your brain that other people decide they're going to program your brain with. You could try to work around it, try to create a different schedule and complexity to not watch it, or you could just throw the damn thing out and have a completely new life. Removing things from your life that are not in alignment with the core inputs you actually want are going to drastically change the energetic outputs. It's so important. So I couldn't emphasize this enough, and I'm actually going to make a separate dedicated video to this. Once you do that, you got to ask yourself, who can I actually add into my life that actually matters? And this is something you got to be really careful with because it can be dangerous. Okay. And again, also who can you remove? Who doesn't belong in your life anymore? What toxic relationships, what connections, who do you watch on a regular basis that maybe is entertaining, but not really actually adding anything into your life? And like in my story, who could you actually add into your life that puts an energetic input of something that you deeply resonate that actually gets you closer to where you want to go? In my specific example I just shared with you, I began to surround myself with health experts that knew about the topic I wanted to be in. I lived and breathed that stuff, right? In the earlier example, there were some mentors in my life that I added in that began to be the core energetic inputs that then dictated how I showed up in life. In life, it's often the who and not the how that actually creates the most drastic results in your life. The third thing that you want to do is start to consider what information are you saturating your brain with? Right? What do you actually look at? And again, are you spending most of your time doom scrolling and looking at random stuff on YouTube? Or are you conscientiously putting your attention on the stuff that actually empowers you? I was talking to a man a couple of days ago who wants to create a new vocation where he wants to be in the health space and assist other people and helping people create better lives and better health in their lives. And he wants to magnetize a new job in that area. And one of the first things I would recommend if you were in that kind of space is you start to live that life. Start to actually go out there and just, again, commit yourself to the mastery of that field. Even if you don't have that job yet, that vocation, you can pretend as if that is already your life and start to spend every waking hour pursuing your passion and actually learning more about that field and pretending as if you already have those clients or you already have that job. And that really dovetails with the next thing, which is mastery. What field are you committed to mastering in your life? What's something that you enjoy working on within yourself, within your own mastery that you don't have mastered yet, but maybe you've stopped working on because you thought, okay, this is good enough. What's the next step there? Can you go and take a course that would help you in that? Can you take the books that you read in this field that made a difference in your life and can you read them again? And then if you read them again and they make an impact on your life, can you read them again? This is something I started doing over and over again, going deeper, deeper, deeper into the mastery of my field. And every single time I go deeper into a book, I read it second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, there's more that comes out. There's nuggets that align within my consciousness that change my energy. And I have a deeper and deeper understanding of the material. And guess what happens? That starts to show up on video. That starts to show up in my energetic field. That starts to show up in how I move and in what shows up in my life. Commit yourself to the mastery. Commit yourself to the 7th degree black belt instead of just being a black belt. That's where all the growth actually starts to happen. And last but not least, and this is probably more important than anything, I hope you can actually see that here, is pay attention to your energy, right? All of this fundamentally shifts your energy, but if you're still going at it in this energy of, "Ugh, I gotta contract and make life happen, so then I'm happy," none of this really makes a difference. And this is probably the hardest thing to see in this equation. And this is where more often than not, we need a mentor or someone to guide us to help us see our blind spots. There's a lot of people who put so much attention into doing this, but if you're still coming at it with an energy of contraction and trying to force things in your life, like, I'm going to use this principle that Casper taught me so I can create better results, that's going to trail over into the output. And that usually comes and stems from lifetimes of trauma and having a nervous system that's just geared into fight or flight. And I spent a lot of times in my life still being in this energy and not really realizing that that's what I was holding. And it was really holding me back. It's not until I started to practice transmutation and really relaxing my nervous system and removing my attention from everything external in my life and meditating and going deep into my connection with God and source, that then also started to trail over into the outputs in my life. And this is very, very important. And until you actually remove this part, start removing crap, it's going to be harder and harder to see. Because as you make space for you and remove the distractions, there'll be more space to actually be with what's really showing up in your life. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and found it enormously helpful. And if you'd love assistance with this, the link to work with me is down below this video. Thanks again so much for watching. Do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.